Welcome back to another video. I have a special guest, a YouTube content creator that has been a favorite of mine for a long time. Just a quick story before we talk about Hunt Simple. Back in 2020, when I purchased my brand new Weatherby Vanguard in 300 Weatherby, I did like a lot of people do, is go to YouTube and start searching videos on your gun or your cartridge. And back in 2020, there was like 3 videos on the 300 Weatherby, and Hunt Simple had the majority of those videos. And I just loved listening to your opinion on how awesome the 300 Weatherby was and your experiences. And so welcome, Hunt Simple. It's so great to see you again on YouTube. You've taken a break for quite some time, and I'm just thrilled to have you on here. And real quick, can you just give us a little history, maybe your background in hunting and reloading, and also your YouTube channel?
Yeah, thank you very much. And that's awesome that those videos a few years ago were helpful for you. And yeah, I've been on a pretty long break. It's just over 3 years, I think, since I've had any content, and it's great to be with you here. I'm looking forward to our conversation. Yeah, just that big picture background. This year will be my 42nd year hunting in the West. Grew up in Montana and grew up hunting whitetails in the mountains of northwest Montana. And then I spent some years after college in Oregon, and that was a great experience with black-tailed deer and hunting elk there. And then for the last almost 20 years, I've lived in Idaho and been in some of the best elk country in the lower 48. And so I've had some great opportunities here, and it's amazing over those 42 years. For a long period of that time of hunting, I was pretty hardcore, multiple tags per year, all of it, public land, most of it over the counter tags. Every now and then I'm lucky enough to draw a controlled tag. You know how that goes.
Yep.
And then the private land hunting that I've done were really depredation hunts where I was helping a couple ranchers. Just mule deer were overrunning their ranch and they got a bunch of tags and just wanted them thinned out. And so I don't really call those hunts. I call those harvests. But all of my hunting's been public land, and it's been awesome. Now as I'm getting older, I've backed off a little bit. I'll be honest. I still get out, but I'm slowing down. And it's interesting. It's not the physical that's slowing me down. I can still do that. I just think at some point, and everybody's different, you kind of go through a phase where you're like, wow, I've been doing this a long time, harvested a lot of animals. My focus now is really more in trying to help others out and, help others, that are learning to hunt in the West or whatever. So that's kind of where I'm at right now. And
well, I think that leads into why you created your YouTube channel.
Yeah, I'm sorry. That's a huge part of it, right? So as time marched on, and social media became a thing, to be honest, I started to really struggle with what I was seeing on social media. It made hunting so commercialized. And one day I was at a local gun shop, probably about just a few months before Hunt Simple started in 2017. I was at a local gun shop, and there was a father and a son in there, and I could tell the young man was probably just getting close to hunting age, or maybe this was going to be his first year to hunt or whatever. And they were looking at some rifles, and they were looking at some, price point rifles that are, great rifles, $400 or $500, $300, $400, $500 would have been ideal for him. And he said to his dad, he goes, "Dad, these seem cheap." And he points up at a Christensen or something like that. And he's like, "This is what we need if we're going to be able to kill deer." And obviously no ill will towards that father and son. But I sat there and I'm like, wow, it tears me up. There's nothing wrong with Christensen, right? But it tore me up to see a young man thinking that hunting or his success would be tied to how much they were willing to spend on the gear. And that just kind of culminated, I guess, years of me feeling like the commercialization just kind of was going too far and kind of starting to really take away from what I think hunting should be more about, which is the experience, not the gear. And so that was kind of the evolution of it. And I didn't really know much about YouTube. My son is a guru. At that time, he would have been about 13 or 14. And he's like, Dad, it's easy. You can just shoot these on your iPhone and upload them. And he really helped me get the ball rolling. And then, it was shocking how quick people seem to like that type of content where it was focused on the process more than the gear.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew right away that people reacted positively to talking about bullets and cartridges. It's such an interesting topic, so many opinions and all that. And my background, the 40 some years of reloading and hunting and seeing what works and what didn't and all that. But then I'm also, by profession, I'm a civil engineer. So a background in the mathematics, tied to ballistics and all the energy and all those things. So it was kind of a natural fit. And it was the spring of 2017. I started putting videos up, and I honestly don't remember. I think in the late summer of 2021, when I kind of turned stuff down, I think I had, maybe 8,000 subscribers or something, which compared to your channel is not a whole heck of a lot. But at the time it was like, wow, I can't believe this many people were interested. So anyway, that's probably more than you wanted, but that's kind of an evolution of how I got from there to here. That's
awesome. Well, you wanted to talk about a little bit how we just barely met, like in the last 24 hours.
Right.
It was just kind of random and really funny. I was looking at the comments in my YouTube studio, and I saw a very educated, logical response to, comparing a Nosler partition to a Hornady interlock. I was about to put this response of like, hey, thanks for commenting. Yeah, what you said makes complete sense. And then I read your YouTube handle and I was like, wait a minute. This can't be him. This can't be Hunt Simple, is it? I just randomly said, hey, did you used to make YouTube content? And then you're like, yeah. And so we had this fun little conversation yesterday, and you came to me and said, hey, what if we do a collaboration video and just talk about our experiences, whether it's hunting and cartridges or with YouTube. And here we are a day later. So I'm thrilled.
Yeah, that's a really cool. I'll never forget that, how that all evolved so quickly. And, it's been interesting these last 3 years or so, since I haven't been producing content. I've been surprised a couple times. I've been an awful long ways away in Montana or other places, and I'll be in a public setting, whatever it is, at a store or somewhere, and I'll kind of catch somebody that kind of keeps looking at me, and it's like they want to say something, but they're not sure. And I'll kind of break the ice a little bit, and they'll go, "Oh, you used to do video." I've had that a few times, and so those have been really positive interactions with people that I think I 100% relate to, and that was really fun to see. You just think, look, I'm just some little guy in the middle of nowhere putting out these videos and it's just weird how it builds a community that you don't expect.
That's awesome. Well, let's get into the meat of our discussion. I mean, most people want to hear favorite cartridge, favorite bullet. So Hunt Simple, what's been your go-to for hunting for you?
That's actually an impossible question. Over the years, if someone pinned me down and said, you got to just pick one cartridge, and it would be the 308.
Okay.
But I've certainly used many cartridges for hunting, and am fond of several. And it's been so awesome over the years to just kind of experiment with different cartridges, different bullets, and real world on game experience. And it's just incredible how much you learn, and you can grow with that. And one of the biggest aha moments, and you talk about it all the time on your channel, is just starting to understand, when people start to understand the relationship between the type of bullet they're using and how it's going to perform at certain impact velocities. It's where I found like the biggest disconnect or just lack of understanding. And it's kind of interesting because the ammo manufacturers, the factory ammo, they put out some kind of bizarre matchups, right? So I remember when I got my first 300 Weatherby, unless you even factory Weatherby ammo for the 300 Weatherby was loaded with cup and core Hornady bullets.
Yeah.
To this day, to see 6.5 Creedmoor loaded with AccuBonds, now that might be okay, and I think AccuBonds, and I think we had a message about that maybe today. I think AccuBonds have maybe changed since they first came out. I think they might have been a little tougher or thicker jacket back in the day, and now they expand a little better at lower velocities. But just the weird connections, because it's a sexy bullet, right? So if someone's putting out 6.5 Creedmoor ammo and they show 140 grain AccuBond, it's a Nosler, people are going to buy that, where it might not have been quite the right balance of bullet type with cartridge. So it's interesting how that works. And I learned the hard way with some bad performance on game when I would use started to experiment with bonded bullets when they first came out, and I was using them in the 308.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's not a velocity king, and downrange, 300 plus yards, I would hit some animals and they'd travel a long ways before they'd expire. And I wasn't getting expansion with the bonded bullets out of the 308. And just over time, I just picked up on those different things, and really pretty much every year I would use new cartridges, new bullets, just so I could have real world data.
Okay. So with all of that experience, I know you said, like, if someone forced you to use a cartridge, it would be 308 Winchester. So what is your bullet of choice, I guess, if you had to only use one?
Right. What a great question. So after playing with everything from 125s to 200s in the 308, I believe 165 is the ideal weight for the 308. It's the best balance of, velocity, BC, those different types of things. I know some people would argue with that, maybe say 150. I don't think you could go wrong either way, but 165. And I think in the 308 with the velocities that it generates, I think a cup and core type of bullet. I would run a Sierra Game King in there. I would run a Nosler ballistic tip, a Hornady. I would not run a bonded bullet at that weight in the 308. I would run a partition all day. Partition, you just had a great video on that. If you ask me what bullet have I killed the most game with out of a 308, it would be 165 grain partition.
Let's talk about 300 Weatherby. From my understanding, you've owned two of them?
I've owned, I think, probably about 3 different 300 Weatherbys over the years. Yeah.
And what I found interesting is I would feel most people using a 300 Weatherby, the 180 grain just seems to be that sweet spot in a 300 Weatherby, but you were running a 150 grain AccuBond. Can you talk a little bit about why you picked that one?
Yeah, for sure. My first 300 Weatherby was back in the 80s. We grew up hunting in Western Montana, the whitetails I mentioned, and 308s. But we started to kind of expand our hunting a little bit, and we realized that it might be nice to have a little more poke than the 308. And my dad actually picked up a 308 Norma mag, and we were like, right on. And so then I got this crazy idea, like I need a belted Magnum. And so I found a brand new 300 Weatherby and a Remington Model 700 Classic. I sold that rifle a long time ago, and I really regret that now. But that was my beginning with 300 Weatherby, 35 to 40 years ago. The last one I had was a Weatherby Vanguard. Geez, you're going to know the model. It was kind of the higher end Vanguard. It had a fluted barrel, and it was like the backcountry. Does that sound right?
Yeah, that sounds about right.
And that was an awesome rifle. And that was the one that I built these 150 grain AccuBonds around. So there was 2 reasons I did that. One, 300 Weatherby has some recoil. And in that light of a rifle, it was a handful, especially at the bench. And I said, if I go with a lighter bullet, maybe I can have a little less recoil. So I had that as a goal. And I was chasing velocity, but didn't want to give up. I didn't want to go any lower than 150. And I ended up coming up with a load that I was breaking 3,500 at the muzzle with 150. And I think the Weatherby can do even more than that, but that was a great load. I believe I was over 4,000 foot-pounds at the muzzle.
Yeah.
And the way I zeroed it, it was just a dead hold on an elk to like 450. Just see an elk, put the crosshairs on the lungs, it's over. That load was phenomenal. And I only trusted an AccuBond at those velocities, right?
Yes.
I would have trusted a partition, but accuracy wise, I just, the AccuBond outperformed the partition.
How did it perform on game? Was it just lights out?
Oh man. Lights out. I shot a few elk with that. I shot a few mule deer, and I'm thinking back, it was incredible energy transfer happening. Never recovered a bullet.
Okay. So you got pass-throughs.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I think that probably I had one bull elk that was kind of quartering towards me, but I snuck it in behind the shoulder and it diagonaled through. It was devastating. And so, that would be, it kind of, you're right. I mean, you think 300 Weatherby, you think 180s, 200s, and those are awesome bullets.
Yeah.
But if that 150 had some interesting potential as well.
Have you ever messed around with any Barnes bullets?
That's an amazing question. I did mess around with Barnes a little bit in the 90s. It was before they had the variety of bullets they have now.
Before the tip.
I think it was kind of, closer to when they kind of started to come onto the scene.
Yeah.
And I struggled with them. I didn't have good luck with accuracy, and there was a lot of fouling. And I know they've evolved a ton, but I would say in the last 10 to 15 years, I really haven't used Barnes.
So I bought some 130 grain, 30 caliber TTSX bullets.
Uh-huh.
And just for the heck of it, I loaded them up in my 300 Weatherby.
Oh, wow.
I was getting almost 3,800 feet per second and sub MOA.
Yeah, I believe it.
I back then I was just really worried I was going to burn my barrel out if I was going to be just shooting 130 grains out of a 300 Weatherby. So I never really used it for hunting, but talk about just laser trajectory. And
well, when you're starting out with that kind of velocity, you're making up for the bad BC.
Right.
You're more than making up for the bad BC. And so, right, I did dink around a little bit with 125 grain AccuBonds in the 300 Weatherby. Yeah, pushing 4,000. Never hunted with them. Always kind of regretted that, but that I think would be lights out on antelope and deer, and frankly even elk, because the energy is just huge.
People swear by this. I know you're a big 308 Winchester fan. People swear by the 130 grain TTSX and 308 because you're going to be pushing that 3,100 feet per second. Yeah. It's like a 270 Winchester at that point. Now, obviously, the BC sucks, but the trajectory is still really good out to 300-400 yards.
Totally. I think that's something to really explore with the 308 Winchester. And I started growing up hunting with 308. We were using 150s, 165s. And those were great. But as I, kept growing in the whole thing, I was like, I remember discovering 125 grain ballistic tips in 30 cal. And my dad and I worked up a load. This was back in probably the early 90s to mid 90s at the most. We worked up a load with Winchester 748. And yeah, we were breaking 3,100 easy with those 125s. And that, I'm pretty sure Nosler at that time, the ballistic tips were more of a varmint concept. They really weren't meant for big game, very thin jacket. But I still was wanting to test that on a deer. So I shot a whitetail buck with that at very close range, 3,100 feet per second. The bullet just grenaded in the vital cavity, and it was instant. I mean, just like the ground was taken out underneath. Yeah. And so it would be bad if you hit a shoulder or something. And I kept, I always was reluctant to use them because of that. And I kept, later on when the AccuBond was released, I was like, please, Nosler, release 125 grain, 30 caliber AccuBond. And when they did, I immediately started running those in my 308, and I think it's low recoil. It opens up a lot of opportunities to kind of stretch the 308 out a little bit.
That's awesome. Well, I kind of want to completely change the subject here, but we're still going to go on cartridges here. I know you have done quite a few videos and have a soft spot for what I think you called it is the Big 7.
Yeah,
we talk about the 7 Rem Mag. So what's your experience with that one?
Yeah, I do have a huge soft spot for the Big 7. And really that originated back when I was very young. My uncle, he was very avid hunter, and he picked up a Ruger M77 back in the 70s in 7 mag. He passed away a couple of years ago, and I have that gun in my safe. And I was always, as a kid, I would take my 308 cartridge and I'd hold it up next to that 7 mag, and I'd just be like, man, that's just too big. That's too powerful. And so as I evolved, and I always wanted to play with 7 mag, and I started doing that back in the 90s too. And then I hunted extensively with 7 mag these last probably 20 years. Huge fan, huge.
What's your bolt of choice in the 7 mag?
I really preferred the 160s.
Okay.
I loaded and ran a lot of different things. I played with 140s. There's things I liked there, but it seemed like every time I would start to focus in on what bullet am I going to use for this fall or this hunt, I'd end up with 160s or 162. And it's so interesting too to hear all the controversy around the ELDX and the love and the hate. But yeah. I did land on a magic load with the 162 ELDX and some Reloader 25, and shot a few elk with that. And I actually had tremendous performance from the ELDX on, I'd be concerned if I was at 50 yards, but where I hunt, you're probably not going to be shooting under 150. And those ELDXs performed well in the 7 mag on elk at 200, 250 yards. Outstanding performance.
Did they hold together at those
they
distances?
Did. Okay. There's a video that I had on the channel. It's actually one that I still have, where my son and I were hunting, and we harvested a bull, and that was those 162, and that bull was at around 260. I hit him twice, about 2 inches apart, and those exited the bull. 162 ELDXs. So, I think it comes down to, would I run 106? Would I run an ELDX if I'm going to know my shots are going to be close? No. In open country where they're usually going to be longer, that my experience has been very positive with that bullet, and they're very accurate, as you know.
Yes, they are.
Yeah.
Funny enough, so I picked up the ELDX as kind of the first bullets for my 300 Weatherby, which probably not the best choice in 300 Weatherby. It was a 178 grain.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, I could not find a good load with it, and
just no consistency.
No good accuracy out of them.
Yeah.
And turns out my 300 Weatherby loves monolithic bullets. So that's what I mostly run. I did find, and I've told you this, I did find a pretty decent load in the Akibons with the 200 grain, because I couldn't find 180 grain at the time. I was planning to use 180 grains, but I just could never find them. So 200 grains worked, and I was getting 3/4 inch groups at 3,100 feet per second, and man, it works.
Yeah, so true. Back in the early 90s, I had a buddy that I grew up with in Montana that was a 300 Weatherby freak also. And he turned me on to the 200 grainers, and he was running 200 grain partitions. And I remember seeing when he was showing me the BC and how much it jumps up from 180 to 200. And he was even using that to hunt whitetails. And, you asked me, what's the best bullet weight for 308?
Yeah.
If you were to ask me that same question for 300 Weatherby, I might say 200. I think 200 might be the ideal bullet weight for 300 Weatherby.
I think I'd absolutely agree with you. I love it. That Akibon, and this is just the normal Akibon, not the ABLR. It has a really good BC, that 200 grain. It's close to a G1 of 0.6. It's almost up there. Yeah. And I think it's one of the best bonded 30 caliber Magnum bullets. I wouldn't recommend like a 308 with a 200 grain AccuBond. I just don't think it's going to expand very well. And even the 30-06 that's pushing it.
Exactly.
Right?
Totally agree with
things
you.
Pretty close, but
totally agree. And, you know, if you said, hey, let's go to Alaska, I'd be carrying a 300 Weatherby with either a 200 grain partition or a 200 grain AccuBond. That's all I would take. So,
yeah.
Back to the Big 7. From that, I tried the 284 variety. I had a 7 rum for a while.
Oh, really?
Yeah, ran a 7 rum for a while. I had a 7 SOM, and I think there's something pretty magic about the 284 diameter. And it's pretty cool to see how it expanded to some of the new cartridges. And it's just, I think it's a great balance of being able to have certain bullet weights that are a little heavier, but the BC mixture is really good. I think 7mm is just an awesome diameter.
It's the flavor of the month. I'm not saying it's going to go away, but it's definitely in right now. The 7mm.
It is. And if you told me I couldn't take that Weatherby to Alaska, it'd be a 7 mag with 175 grain partitions.
Yeah. Well, speaking of 7 mag, I've been doing a lot of 7 mag content with my friend. He has a Browning X-Bolt. It has a 1 8 twist. The chamber has been lengthened out, so it's made for modern bullets, and so the magazine is like 3.7 inches long.
Wow.
And so of recently, we were just messing around with the 195 grain burgers, and with Vihtavuori N570, we were easily getting 3,000 feet per second and sub half MOA groups with it. And
that's
you call the 7 mag the Big 7. I always, coming from a 300 Weatherby, I always called it the baby Magnum, just because a 175 grain at 2,900, it's like, okay, that's nice, but you know, I think modern powders, if you want to use those high BC cup and core bullets, boy, it turns that 7 mag into something special.
It does. That's amazing that you're getting those velocities with 195s. I could never break 3,000 with 175s. I got pressure signs when I broke 2950. And that's kind of why I went to which would be a tremendous load, but I kind of went back to the 160s because I could get to 3,000. And that's a whole nother topic too, right? I don't know at what point in my learning process around reloading and cartridges, I recognized the 3,000 foot per second mark is kind of something magic starts happening right around there. And, like I said, that's a big topic to get into.
Was there anything else you wanted to talk about? We haven't really talked about any of the new cartridges. I feel like you've missed all of the big, huge marketing from Hornady of lately, even the 6.8 Western from Winchester and Browning. Do you have any hot takes on those cartridges?
Yeah, even though I've been out of the mix here on YouTube, I've been keeping an eye on that stuff. I think it's very interesting. In fact, my son this year, he picked up a 300 PRC, and we've been loading for that and shooting that, and he's having a blast, and I'm having a blast with that. And it's interesting. I like it. So I'm of the mindset that I love the old cartridges, but I have nothing against the new ones too. Let's acknowledge that they all have a place, right? And it's interesting to hear the different people get passionate, man. That's something I learned in a hurry when I started putting out content. There's some passion out there around people's favorite bullet or cartridge. It's a personal thing,
and only that thing will work.
Only that will work. Yeah.
Right.
And so I love that the industry is putting out new things. Yes, a lot of it ballistically is duplicating stuff that's maybe been around for years. But who cares? It's another option. It's another choice. I get the purpose behind saying goodbye to the belts and what that helps out on the cartridges and the ability to have the longer BC, the longer, sleeker bullets, not getting into the powder capacity and all those things. And it makes a lot of sense. These are cool developments. This is one of the best. I'll say this: this is the best time to be interested in and active in shooting. Availability of some stuff with COVID, that's frustrating. How we've had to deal with challenges with getting certain things, but outside of that, what a great time to be passionate or interested in special center fire rifles.
Oh yeah. And I think you've made a video on this. I mean, you've been hunting for a long time. You've talked about, if I remember correctly, just how far factory ammo has come. I mean, factory ammo these days is getting close to matching hand-loaded performance.
Truly, I totally agree. Watching that evolve too has been interesting. I would argue that most reloaders, your guy that maybe reloads right before hunting season every year, or maybe 4 or 5 times a year, he's probably not producing. There's always exceptions, but he's probably not producing loads that are any better than some of the better factory stuff. Now, some of these precision reloaders that are really dialed in and they're squaring up, flash holes and all this. I've had some factory stuff over the last few years that was like lights out, and not the high end, just boxes of $25 stuff,
And it's interesting. Every gun's going to like something different. I mean, as you said, like some guns love Winchester ammo, and it's not the stuff that's from Nosler or from Hornady or Berger. It's the cheap stuff, and it's just funny how that works.
It is really funny, for sure. And one of the things I tried to do over the years was to figure out like what part of the components, I guess, ranking like which part of a cartridge has the most impact on accuracy and performance for that cartridge. So is it the brass? Is it the primers? Is it the powder? Is it the bullet? And that's pretty hard. It's hard to determine, but I think in the end, I kind of concluded a few things that are very interesting and learned a few things too that helped me, kind of hone in on loads pretty quickly with different rifles.
That's awesome. So well, don't leave us hanging.
Well, naturally seating depth is a massive one. But after that, it's really interesting. Maybe there's 2 of them that are tied: flat base versus boat tail.
Okay.
I had rifles that would love one and hate the other. I had rifles that didn't care, and I would just keep pounding boat tails out of these rifles and struggle, and I'd switch to a flat base, and it was a 3/8 inch rifle.
Yeah.
And I just came to the conclusion that it had to do with how the bullet's sealing in the barrel, and I don't know.
Yeah.
So that's something I would encourage people. If you're struggling with a flat base, switch to a boat tail and vice versa, and it might change everything. And of course, powder in charge is a big thing.
Obviously.
But, so it was kind of in that order. And the first thing I would do is just start fiddling with seating depth.
Was there anything else you wanted to discuss more? I have one more thing, but I'd have to go get it. I just wanted to show off my dream rifle.
Let's do it. Yeah.
For anyone that's been around the channel a lot, I love showing off my Mark V Deluxe. I'm not sure you've seen the videos on it, but this gun is just, I think, one of the prettiest guns ever made. I don't know. Have you ever had any experiences with a Mark V Deluxe at all?
Never owned one. Handled many over the years. Just a few friends and just, at gun stores and stuff. And
yeah.
It's an absolutely beautiful firearm. I mean, it's classic, and I just love the way Weatherby designed the comb to recoil away from you. It's amazing that other manufacturers haven't figured that out even to this day. But that's a beautiful rifle. And how does it shoot?
Surprisingly well. It's in a 340 Weatherby Magnum. That is
monster.
I've kept the muzzle brake on this just because I want to get the best accuracy I can out of it.
Yeah.
And it's hard. It's hard to shoot well. But I've gotten half MOA with the 250 AccuBonds.
Hand loads.
Yes, hand loads. I don't buy factory ammo. I've very much of the the hunt simple and try to keep things affordable. Yes, I bought a $3,000 rifle, but I can't really particularly afford weatherby ammo. So,
No,
or at least I don't
no.
want to try to afford it.
Right.
But
No.
and I want to be able to shoot the bullets that I want. So that's, we talked about how awesome factory ammo is. Sometimes you just don't get the bullets you want to shoot. So
That's right.
hand loading gives you that option. So
yeah. And just the satisfaction. To me, hand loading is just an awesome hobby. It's the funnest thing to do, and it's just got that element to it also that makes it worthwhile. So that rifle is a 26-inch barrel, I'm sure.
yes, it is a 26-inch barrel.
Yeah.
So
wow. The thing is just beautiful. I would be afraid to take that into the mountains.
Oh, I am.
Yeah.
Trust me. I have my elk hunt coming up here in a week, and I keep saying I'm going to take it, but I've got my 300 Weatherby that I'm like, yeah, I don't really care if I scratch that up. So
right.
We'll see what I do.
It's interesting. For a period of time from about 2012 to about, well, it was, I guess, only maybe 2 or 3 years, 2012 to 2015, I did a lot of work with 338 Win Mag. And I absolutely love that cartridge too. And a super fun bullet, and maybe you've even played with it, is the 300 grain AccuBond.
I have not. Funny enough, it's like the cheapest at my local store out of all the AccuBonds in 338.
Probably nobody buys them, so they want to get
Yeah.
rid of them.
Right.
The PC is like well over 600, and
Yeah.
I think I could get about 2,600 out of a 338 Win Mag. You're going to get quite a bit more than that out of your Weatherby. Yeah. And you want to talk about dropping the hammer.
Oh, yeah. So my goal with this 250 grain is bare minimum 2,900 feet per second. 3,000 is definitely achievable, but I'm not trying to hot rod it that much.
Right.
I have shot the 225 grain well over 3,100 feet per second, which
every one of those loads you just described is delivering over 4,000 foot-pounds at the muzzle.
Close to 5,000.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, that's
it's like 4,800 foot-pounds. But this was kind of my once in a lifetime gun. I know it's not for everyone, and it certainly isn't the most precise gun. I bought it because it's pretty.
Yeah.
I mean, this skinny little barrel, as I said, this thing is a bit finicky to get accurate, but I have gotten half MOA out of it. So
yeah. Did you play with different bullets, or did you just jump right to the 250 AccuBond?
No, I'm still playing with it. I've only put 100 rounds through this barrel. I've had this gun for about 4 months. Yeah, I'm still not set on my 250 grain load because I want it to go faster. It's right now going about 2,800, but yeah, I've been messing with some hammer bullets, Barnes bullets, muzzler. Yeah, I'm gonna try a bunch of bullets. I mean, this thing's gonna have incredibly long barrel life, so I'm not worried about shooting the barrel out. Yeah. It's gonna have at least 3,000 rounds bare minimum in 338. It's a huge jump from 30 caliber.
Oh, it is. It really is. There's, a big fan of 338 diameter. And I think, again, everybody got caught up in the big velocity craze and stuff like that kind of faded. But I did mess around with some loads for my 338 Win Mag. I want to say they were 165. Barnes put out 165 grainer.
It's a 160 grain.
Well, yeah, there you go. And I remember playing with that and achieving some velocities that were mind-blowing. And I'm like, yeah, this is pretty cool.
I've shot it once with Winchester 760. I have some 160 TTSX Barnes bullets, almost 3,600 feet per second.
Jeez.
And that powder is not like known for getting you the high velocities, right?
Yeah.
So if I stuff that full of 7828 SSC, I'm sure easily 3,600 or some other powder. But yeah.
Well, it's interesting with, I get that for bench rest or long range competitive shooting or whatever, I get rid of I get why they wanted to get rid of belts and have the cartridges perform better. The geometry of the cartridge. But from a hunting perspective, belted cases are not a concern. The accuracy that comes out is nothing to worry about. And Roy Weatherby knew what he was doing when he started building these cartridges. And to this day, they're right there, if not ahead of stuff
Yeah.
that's coming out. So.
Hey, Hunt Simple, thank you so much for coming on. It is so awesome to see you on YouTube again. And guys, comment below if you want to see Hunt Simple make content again. I certainly do. And I'm sure if he got some positive feedback, maybe he might start making content again. But thanks again so much for coming on. I really appreciate it, and hope you guys have a great day.